Chapter 6 Charles and Sarah. The following case demonstrates a love bite with a targeted individual, set up and manipulated by the alien abductors. This is a one-sided obsession on the part of the male abductee. Charles, a lifelong abductee, meets Sarah at a New Age conference and later meets her again at a small UFO lecture. He senses a strong emotional and sexual attraction to Sarah, even though Sarah is married. Sarah seems very familiar to Charles, who claims to have had intimate dreams of her traceable to his teens. Moreover, Charles is convinced he has had a mutually shared alien abduction experience with Sarah, in which they had bonded sexually. Charles distinctly remembers a particular body mark, a scar on her inner thigh, that he could only know if he saw Sarah nude and at close range, which he claims to have seen while on board an alien ship. Charles becomes infatuated with Sarah and calls her every day, sometimes several times a day. He tells Sarah some of his alien abduction memories, but Sarah is overwhelmed and grows frightened. 10 days later Charles tells Sarah that the aliens matched them at an early age because they had similar energetic frequencies. He also mentions that she has a scar on a certain part of her body. Sarah brushes the comment off as a weird coincidence and tries to forget about it, but reports a growing familiarity, an approach avoidance conflict, toward and against Charles. Weeks go by. Charles can't get Sarah out of his mind. While at home watching television, he sees Sarah's face on a beautiful model on horseback, bringing tears to his eyes. He is overwhelmed with emotion and love for Sarah. Charles continues having flashbacks of having been with Sarah in dreams. He sees her riding bareback through some dark woods, but she is not in danger. The vividness of these daydreams and visions increase to such a degree that he begins to understand them as artifacts of the bonding program, initiated by aliens years ago. Charles called Sarah to tell her about his insight and tries to reduce her own anxieties about their free-falling and ambiguous relationship. Only then did Sarah tell Charles she owned a Connemara show horse and was deeply involved in eventing, dressage and other equestrian activities. Still, Sarah remained glib. Oh well, Sarah thought, it must be another coincidence. Charles, sensing rejection, grew anxious again. He saw the scar revelation and the equestrian vision as elements in a vast dharmic destiny, a path he should follow in life. Sadly, Charles could not bring himself to see the dangers involved in obsessive behavior. He was now fully in love with a woman he believed to be his future wife. He believes that he and Sarah will be together in the future and have a special destiny, perhaps to bear a child together. Charles also secretly believes that Sarah's youngest child, that she has with her husband, may really be his. Sarah did not reciprocate feelings for Charles and remained aloof, although she admittedly did not want to provoke him into irrational behavior. Finally Charles saw the big picture and was crushed with unrequited love, a clearly defined earmark of the love bite phenomenon, but he did not give up hope. Charles said he was not trying to develop a sexual relationship with Sarah and claims he has been celibate for years. He felt the aliens prevented him from having sexual relationships, other than the ones they choose for him. Sarah's rejection made no sense to him. He was certain their love would be consummated in a romantic and erotic manner. During winter, several months after Sarah's offer of simple friendship, Charles claims to have been abducted again and recalls being fully conscious during this encounter. He claims the aliens instructed him to have sexual relations with his choice of a number of female subjects who are also on board the craft, but in a trance-like state. The aliens give Charles positive ego stroking and send him home without trauma. Charles claims he recalls having sexual relations with one of the women offered to him, during that alien encounter while on the ship. Charles claims that the aliens gave him secret information and hinted that they might have a special mission for him in the future. The next spring Charles called Sarah again, this time to apologize, but the more they talked the more she realized he was still obsessed. This frightened her again and she made great efforts to cut off contact with him for good. She moved out of town, got a job transfer, and changed her appearance. Charles had difficulty taking the hint and was grief-stricken. The two never saw one another again. Chapter 7 Scott, Sharon and Angelina. In this case a married couple were forced to separate because both subjects were abducted and subsequently manipulated. Scott is an abductee who has had encounters throughout his life. Sharon, his wife of 2 years, is also an abductee, but is embarrassed to talk about her experiences. Sharon has seen anomalous beings in her home in the middle of the night, one she described as an alligator man, and another as an illuminated being waving a long light wand. Sharon becomes angry when Scott brings up the UFO subject. On the couple's 1-year anniversary, they decided to take a week-long camping trip to the wilderness. They were relatively happy until that point. One morning during the camping trip, Scott suddenly, and without explanation, was no longer attracted to his wife, emotionally or sexually. Even so, he continued to have sexual relations with her, just to please her. Scott became more interested in researching his alien abductions and started attending my support group. Sharon scoffed at Scott's realizations that he was a lifelong abductee and reacted to the subject of UFOs and abductions with hostility. She emotionally cut off Scott, especially when the alien topic came up. One night Scott awoke to discover strange markings on his chest and on the bed sheets. These symbols were drawn in an ink-like substance. Scott had a sample analyzed in a professional lab, but the results were inconclusive and unfortunately he failed to photograph the marks. He showed Sharon the strange markings, which she shrugged off. She figured he went down and got a tattoo. She began to admonish him for engaging in such bizarre fantasies and argued with him constantly. Her main concern was that he had cut a hole in a perfectly good pair of percale sheets. As the weeks went by, Scott noticed that his wife was switched off sexually. He tried to rekindle the flame, made repeated sexual advances, but she remained unresponsive. In counseling, the couple decided to separate for a while and start dating others, perhaps to rekindle the flame. This seemed to work for Scott and his feelings for his wife returned. Sharon, however, found someone else and filed for divorce. Throughout this difficult time, Scott corresponded with Angelina, an abductee support group member, along with several other abductees in my support group. Angelina and Scott become good friends, feeling like they have known each other for years. Shortly after their meeting, a set of unusual dramas started to unfold and they began to experience mutually shared dreams and abduction scenarios together. Angelina, who also figures in the next case history, remembered waking dreams and abduction-related scenarios that involve Scott in an intimate and sexual way. Scott recalled having dreams of Angelina, but thought they were just dreams. Luckily, Scott and Angelina are both aware of the possibility that they might be caught up in a love-bite bonding experiment, and feel that they are being set up by the aliens to become romantically involved. They decided to avoid sexual intimacy, although a highly erotic and trance-like tension overwhelms them when they are alone together. We are still in touch with them and feel that they have overcome the love-bite attraction that the aliens set up for them. Chapter 8 Angelina and Steve. This is case of a married couple in which both partners experienced alien contact. It involves elements of relationship manipulation, the love bite, spiritual warfare and other anomalies. Angelina, the same Angelina who figured so prominently in the lives of Scott and Sharon, is the primary abductee. Dick, her husband of 15 years, didn't consider himself an abductee until 4 or 5 years after they were married. They have 3 children. Angelina is a lifelong abductee. Her mother and grandmother also report UFO encounters, missing time, and probable abductions. Angelina reports being abducted by several different alien types, including traditional greys with black oval eyes, short tan types, reptilians, human military personnel and humans dressed in lab coats working in full cooperation with the aliens. Dick doesn't believe in Angelina's encounters and is emotionally unsupportive, glib, controlling and sometimes abusive. Often during Angelina's abductions Dick is sound asleep and cannot be wakened, as if drugged. Angelina has sexual encounters with a 7-foot-tall lizard man. During these episodes, She is immobilized and is given a screen memory of making love to her favorite movie star. At times Angelina has been able to break through the implanted screen memory to observe a reptilian with scales, red or yellow snake-slit eyes, long claw-like fingers and a tail. The reptilian repeatedly rapes her and exhibits jealous and dominating behaviors towards Angelina's husband. For example, one night in bed, Angelina, not yet asleep, was lying with Dick's arm around her. The reptilian enters the bedroom through some sort of interdimensional portal and lies down on the bed. Then the reptilian grabs Dick's arm and flings it back to his side of the bed. The lizard man playfully strokes Angelina's hair and proceeds to have sexual intercourse with her while she is paralyzed. These sexual liaisons have increased her sex drive to an unnatural degree. She admits that the sexual interactions with the reptilian are sometimes quite arousing, even more so than with human men. Her body responds with a heightened orgasm, yet she has intense feelings of guilt and shame. She told my support group she believes she is being conditioned for some future purpose, something having to do with a breeding program. She has had unusual dreams where she is shown a hybrid human-reptilian baby. An alien voice tells her the child is hers, but she is repulsed to the point of nausea. After the first attacks, Angelina developed an irregular menstrual cycle, and began to feel pregnant on several occasions. During these cycles her breasts swell and even lactate. On one occasion she was overcome with painful uterine cramps and expelled a brownish mass which she immediately flushed down the toilet. She doesn't have health insurance, so she did not save the fetus for later lab examination. She also has problems with visits to any doctor. This can be partially attributed to the alien's suggestion to not trust doctors. When I interviewed her, she was convinced the aborted mass was an alien fetus. Eventually Angelina developed an eating disorder and began to lose weight, all the while losing desire for her emotionally unsupportive husband. She attributes this disorder to the fact that she cannot discuss the assaults with her husband because he becomes angry when she brings up the alien issue. To make matters worse, Dick is stuck in a poisonous dilemma. He loves his wife, but thinks she's nuts. On the other hand, her accounts are so vivid, so consistent that he must, at least partially, believe her. She is, with the exception of the eating disorder, perfectly rational in every other way. She gets her work done, and she is fully functional in everyday life. Dick vacillates constantly. When he does believe her, he blames her for the problem, somehow it must be her fault. Many men blame the woman for being too sexy when a rape occurs. They think the woman wore a dress that was too revealing or walked in a loose manner, and Dick is no exception. He believes the alien presence in their life is like a minor headache. If you simply ignore the problem, it will go away. Dick has no idea that he too has been manipulated by the aliens and refuses to accept any testimony toward that end. To support the idea that Dick is also being programmed, Angelina claims the aliens send her painful warning signals as soon as she talks to her friends or the support group about the abductions. It is almost as if the aliens are threatening reprisals against her rebellion. When she speaks on the phone, she hears loud static, clicking noises and even hissing and breathing sounds. These sounds do not occur when a non-alien content-related phone call is made. These interferences have been witnessed and recorded by several persons who know Angelina, and they insist she is not paranoid or delusional. Through an alien-orchestrated setup, Angelina meets another male abductee named Steve who is sympathetic to her problems. He is married, but separated from his current wife, who is not an abductee. Angelina recalls sexual bonding encounters in a dreamlike virtual reality scenario 2 months prior to meeting Steve. This scenario involved cuddling in bed nude with Steve, and being given suggestions to have sexual relations. The prop set consisted of a generic-looking hotel room, white bed covers, sheets and pillows, white room, etc. It appears that the aliens deliberately set up these two individuals for a love affair. Angelina recalled hearing a male human voice in the bonding scenario, telepathically communicating to her that she is to meet Steve later on. He lives over 100 miles away in another town, and the chances of them meeting at random were remote. Angelina eventually met Steve through a neighbor down the street by chance. She remembers 3 separate bonding dreams before she met Steve. As soon as they met, they had an instant attraction to one another. Angelina remembers the previous dreams, and even asks Steve if he remembers anything. He does not, yet feels like he has known Angelina before. They both fall obsessively in love with one another and start a series of deeply passionate sexual encounters. Angelina goes away on a weekend escapade with Steve after having a fight with her husband. While Steve and Angelina are together out of town, they feel like they are being watched. Meanwhile, Dick is at home having spontaneous remote viewing images and vivid dreams of Angelina having sex with another man. Seething inside, Dick is incited to jealousy and anger. When Angelina returns from her weekend trip, she notices Dick acting strangely, as if he knows something. Angelina is aware of small balls of light in the house. She knows these lights to be associated with the gray aliens. Dick has no clue whatsoever and is still very much in denial about anything regarding the aliens. She observes the lights around Dick and watches them passively as they enter his head. She sees these lights through clairvoyant vision, but Dick cannot see them. Dick immediately becomes angry, agitated and accuses Angelina of having an affair. He tells Angelina of the images and dreams he had of her and the other man, perfectly describing the clothes she wore, which were purchased in another town while on the trip. Dick also accurately described Steve and the hotel room they shared. Angelina is shocked, because he described everything as it really was even though Dick and Steve had never met. Angelina begins to think that Dick followed them or had them followed by a friend or private investigator. But he did not hire anyone. She denies the accusations, fearing physical abuse from Dick. Figure 2. Several abductees recall love bonding sessions while being observed by aliens. In this case, the tall gray alien in the cape seemed to be the leader. Several abductees visited Angelina and confirmed that the small balls of light remained active in her home. These abductees also exhibit clairvoyant faculties and auric vision. Angelina believes that these particular bluish lights are associated with the grays when they telepathically communicate verbally or through mental imagery. There are also black balls of light, which range from very small to the size of a basketball. Angelina claims that these black orbs create violent mood swings, from serenity one moment to anger, rage and violence the next, almost as if the victim is possessed. The smaller, fuzzy blue lights seem to have a calming and stabilizing effect. In addition to the floating lights, Angelina begins to perceive the human aura, interdimensional portal energy vortexes, and she reports being able to see into the future. On one occasion, during a visit to Angelina's home, at least 3 friends observed unusual electromagnetic energy points, like Kirlian images, emanating from certain areas of the house. A reptilian being was also observed by 2 independent witnesses. This type they amusingly termed a baby Godzilla. The creature stands about 3 feet in height, has a beak-like snout, tail, and clawed hands and feet. Angelina's children have also observed these creatures in the home at night in full physical form. On one rare occasion, Angelina and Dick saw one of these creatures early in the morning. In a hurry to get up and see it, Angelina stepped on the reptilian's tail, causing it to squeal like a pig. Then it quickly disappeared into thin air. Soon after the alien-directed bondings and real romantic affair, Angelina and Steve fall in love, but due to financial problems, they cannot be together. Both Steve and Angelina are in anguish. The love obsession lasted for about 6 months, after which the obsessive feelings dissipated for each partner and a mutual denouncement was agreed upon. Angelina recalls an abduction dream where she is told Steve will not be needed anymore. Thereafter, Angelina no longer feels the yearning need for him. Figure 3. Angelina's recollection of 2 tall aliens as they appeared to her at her bedside. She felt helpless and remembers only the trance state, as if it was a lucid dream. Angelina wants her marriage to work, but Dick grows difficult, emotionally abusive, controlling, and remains in denial of their problems. He refuses to acknowledge the abductions. This creates a serious rift. As a result, Angelina continues to feel emotionally isolated. Both Angelina and Dick are practicing Roman Catholics, married in the church. Angelina has a religious friend who prays with her, and they jointly decide to pray for Dick. Within 2 days he has an encounter with a grey in their bedroom at night and is absolutely petrified. Dick now believes Angelina about the aliens and they both start attending Mass every week. Their relationship improves for a couple of months, but Dick soon goes back into denial. He maintains that if Angelina just stays away from her abductee friends, goes to church and ignores the aliens, it will all go away. It didn't. The troubles continued for months, so the couple sought out a priest from their church to exorcise the house. After the priest blessed the house, the aliens returned and activity seemed to escalate. Angelina is again warned by the aliens not to talk or visit the support group abductees or her religious friend. The aliens, or an intelligence behind them, threaten Angelina that if she tells of her experiences something bad will happen to her neighbor. Angelina talked anyway, because she grew tired of the threats. Within a couple of days, Angelina's next-door neighbor visited and suddenly dropped to her knees in a trance and began growling and hissing, as if she was possessed. She also began to foam at the mouth and muttered odd sounds while writhing on the ground. The woman seemed to be taken over by a demonic entity. Angelina naturally calls 911. The neighbor eventually snaps out of the fit and returns home, not fully cognizant of what happened. The next-door neighbor had no history of epilepsy or seizures of any kind prior to that event. The neighbor was seemingly normal the next day and was not taken to the hospital, but for weeks after the seizure she and her sons reported what they called poltergeist activity. Figure 4, Angelina's recollection of 2 baby Godzilla aliens walking through her kitchen with a wand device. Due to the extreme stress of the family's situation, Angelina and Dick's marriage started going downhill and soon they were talking of divorce. Meanwhile, the abductions by the Greys, military men and humans in lab coats continued. As a result of contact with the support group, Angelina has made great strides in her personal growth and self-esteem. She and her husband are keeping their marriage together, but it is still difficult. To this day, Angelina has contacts with the aliens and human types. She, her husband, abductee friends and neighbors have observed unmarked white vans and persons watching their home and other locales that Angelina visits. Surveillance seems to be just a part of life. This includes, but is not limited to, phone tapping, clicks, static and being cut off, being followed by an unmarked black cars, a hearse to be exact, on one occasion, and also black helicopter activity. To date, Angelina has accepted her fate. Her marriage to Dick has held together despite the forces against them. At the present time, Angelina does not consider her love life a priority, as other more important survival issues have taken precedence. Since the time we met, she has grown and matured tremendously and has developed a thick skin emotionally. Chapter 9, Sophia and Dave. Sophia's case deals with human and alien mind control, and demonstrates how certain government agencies may be consorting with aliens to achieve mutual goals. As you will see, Sophia's alien-orchestrated love obsession created incomprehensible grief and pain in her life, but she also claims to have been transformed by the experiences in a positive way. Sophia, a 35-year-old wife and mother, has had alien encounters since childhood. Her mother, father and siblings have also had encounters throughout their own lives. Her husband, George, is not an abductee nor are any of his immediate family members. 2 months before Sophia became pregnant, she had an alien visitation and a telepathic message stating that the aliens needed more offspring. The married couple had a young daughter, who by the age of 2, started having nightmares and extreme phobias of monsters and bugs. Sophia went on a truth quest in 1993 and worked on many personal growth issues through counseling and alternative healing therapies. She attended various lectures and UFO conferences and sought out an abductions therapist to help her with her alien abduction issues because nothing out there seemed to be able to crack the memory barrier, including psychic readings or channeled messages. Sophia told the counselors she has often felt emotionally disconnected from George as he was generally unavailable, working long hours away from home. Sophia did not share her experiences with him because he probably would not be sympathetic. She often wondered why she even married him. They seemed to have so little in common. At this point in Sophia's truth quest, she met Dave, an older, charismatic man, who was also an abductee. Sophia met Dave at a lecture, and when he saw Sophia he couldn't take his eyes off her, as if he recognized her from somewhere else. When Dave saw Sophia, his eyes locked on hers for quite some time. Ordinarily Sophia would have looked away, but felt compelled to hold her gaze until Dave shifted his eyes. There was something extraordinary about him, something familiar and important. For some reason Sophia felt that she must get to know this man and talk to him about her dreams and abductions. Dave was very interested in Sophia and her budding home-based business. After a flirtatious chat in the hotel lobby they exchanged business cards. Within a week the two started corresponding by telephone and mail. They shared interests on the alien abduction topic, dreams and paranormal experiences. Then Sophia started having vague memories of dreams she had several years prior, dreams of being sexually intimate with a man she loved and knew well. She couldn't remember what the man looked like, but vividly remembered his touch, his smell and even how he made love. It was uncanny. One memory, which she did not share with Dave, included being in some kind of bedroom scene, making love to a man she thought to be her husband. Above the bed, in an enclosed windowed-off area, stood about 4 or 5 white lab-coated beings observing the couple's love-making experience, as if they were scientists. During the height of the love-making process, where both reached a climax simultaneously, a series of bluish-white lights ascended from both her and her lover's body. She also remembers overhearing a comment from one of the lab-coated observers above. As the balls of light ascended, one of the scientists commented, "Look, they've created luminaries." Sophia started having dreams of Dave soon after their meeting and continued correspondence. She felt an intense and increasing romantic attraction to him. Because of common interests in the paranormal field, they had jointly decided to do lucid dream experiments and psychic messages with one another. Sophia felt that Dave had loving feelings for her, but chalked it up to her imagination. But the feelings of love that Sophia sensed from Dave persisted. Sophia did not share this with Dave, knowing he was already married. One particular day, several months after they started corresponding, Sophia received a strong empathic connection and musical tune from Dave. The melody was an older song she had not heard or thought about in years, and it brought mixed emotions of a deeply personal nature concerning Dave and his life's ambitions. Sophia described it as being spiritually connected to Dave's inner soul. Emotions of love, joy, grief, suffering, anger and such passion that it brought Sophia to tears all in a matter of seconds. After that experience Sophia saw her relationship with Dave as empathic and emotionally connected. Sophia continued to sense a passionate love emanating from Dave towards her. It wasn't her imagination. She became confused, because Dave gave her double messages while conversing on the phone. Sophia shared her deeply spiritual and emotional experience with Dave, and he admitted that Sophia's perception and song was exactly what he was about. He was impressed by Sophia's accuracy to pick up on such personal details and his favorite song. Gradually Dave started opening up and revealed dreams he had several years back about a woman who resembled Sophia. Dave intuitively knew some of Sophia's innermost secrets, things she had not told anyone. Dave's empathy and clairvoyance impressed her. Dave was emotionally connected to a particular dream character that he thought could be Sophia. Even though Dave claimed to be happily married, Sophia sensed a strong sexual attraction growing between them. This made the relationship both attractive and confusing to her. As a moral person she felt breaking her marriage vows to be one of the worst possible things anyone could do. But now, she realized how tempting infidelity could be. In spite of her moral restraint Sophia grew more obsessed with Dave and called him at least once a week. She thought about him constantly, and tried to fight the feelings of overwhelming love she had for him. Every time Sophia heard his voice she melted, became mesmerized and fell in love with him all over again. The two abductees made plans to meet one another at another UFO conference. Sophia began to wonder if Dave's dream character was really her. She seemed to have no control over her consuming feelings of love and passion for him. About a week before the UFO conference, Sophia awoke within a dream finding herself arguing with an intense-looking, aqua-blue-eyed human male. The stern man was about 30 and wanted information about Dave's dream character. Sophia didn't know and yelled at the man, "I just want to know the truth." She awakened to hearing herself yelling, something she rarely did and had never before experienced in a dream state. This entire episode was creating, in her, a person she did not recognize, an alter ego who was quite emotional and somewhat off the deep end. Sophia resisted and went back to sleep. Later in counseling she remarked that she felt like she was in a trance, as if being put back to sleep under control. In this trance-like state, she received impressions and telepathic messages leading her to have sexual relations with Dave. Thoughts and ideas entered into her mind on how wonderful, passionate and perfect it would be to make love to Dave. Sophia knew these things were being implanted into her mind, and it was difficult, if not impossible, to resist fantasizing about Dave. Sophia told the support group that she became aware of another presence in the room that same night, a presence, almost like a coach that goaded her into fantasizing about Dave and their scheduled tryst. Sensing that something was askew, Sophia refused the suggestion and retorted, "No, I'm not going to do that." Sophia awoke angry that some intelligence, possibly alien, was impressing thoughts and images into her mind to do something immoral that wasn't her idea to begin with. Sophia awoke a third time that night, this time to her daughter's terrifying screams. She rushed out of bedroom to find her daughter running downstairs screaming to get away from the monsters. The frightened child complained that she had to run away from the monsters that were in her room upstairs. Were these monsters aliens? A week later, Sophia met Dave at the conference. They shared some of their experiences, held hands and hugged, but refrained from any sexual contact. Sophia admitted that the urge to become romantically involved was very strong, but knew it was not in her or Dave's best interest. After all, they were both married. Dave admitted to Sophia that he had experienced spontaneous remote, viewing images of her. One was a vision of her wearing a particularly sexy robe that he described in exact detail. Sophia had also received mental images of Dave at his home office, which he confirmed as very close to actuality. After meeting Dave at the conference things died down for a while, but within a month the abductions came back. Sophia had other abduction-related dreams involving a lab-coated doctor giving her a rectal exam. Before the doctor performed the exam, Sophia became lucid, wondering why some unknown man was making her bend over against a medical table to do a rectal probe. The lab-coated man, impressed upon her mind that it was Dave and that it was all right, in order to make Sophia relax. Sophia later realized this to be a screen memory of an alien encounter and possibly an attempt to force she and Dave to go against their moral beliefs about marital fidelity. Odd things continued to happen after meeting Dave at the UFO conference. On another occasion Sophia had another virtual reality dream. She became lucid about an hour and a half after falling asleep one evening. The bedroom was dark, and Sophia awoke within the dream to find Dave in bed next to her on her right side. Her husband remained asleep on her left. Sophia couldn't believe her eyes, so she touched Dave on his face to feel whether it was really him. It certainly felt like Dave, but when she spoke to him he could only mumble odd, incomprehensible sounds, as if in a time warp. Sophia wanted to prove to herself that this was not just a normal dream, so she got up out of bed, walked around the room and stomped her feet on the ground to make sure she was real. Sure enough, she felt real and Dave was still in bed. Sophia remarked that in a normal lucid dream she sometimes has to fight to maintain awareness and may fade out of the dream into REM sleep, but in this virtual reality dream, Sophia noticed how easy it was to maintain conscious awareness for a long period. Sophia returned back to bed where Dave and her husband still apparently lay. Then something unexpected happened. George awoke, sat up robotically in bed and walked out of the room. It was as if he was an automaton being controlled by an external force. Sophia then decided to explore Dave's body, since she thought it was just a lucid dream, and proceeded to make love to him. But before doing so, Sophia decided to see if there was any kind of evidence she could bring back from the experience. She noticed that Dave was wearing a pair of boxer shorts with a distinctive plaid pattern, and she pulled them off to keep them after the experience. She then fell back to sleep. The next morning she searched high and low for the plaid boxers and could not locate them. George woke up, took a shower and asked her what she was searching for. She told George she was looking for her favorite bra and that it must still be in the laundry. Sophia realized that this experience was some type of mind manipulation and that she was beginning to lie about it to save George's feelings. She called Dave as soon as she found herself alone. After describing this experience to Dave, he embarrassingly admitted that he did own a pair of plaid boxers identical to those Sophia described. This so-called coincidence was highlighted by the fact that Sophia knew the brand name of the briefs and that they were an odd and very exotic brand. Dave had purchased several pairs in France on a business trip a few months earlier. Dave also described to Sophia virtual reality experiences he had of her when he was in some kind of altered state. Dave mentioned that on more than one occasion he became lucid in bed, sensing that Sophia was next to him completely nude. He later admitted that he was actually touching his wife in bed, but had intense mental imagery overriding his true perceptions, and instead saw Sophia next to him. This had never happened to Dave before. During that same conversation, Sophia admitted to several other lucid dreams focusing on Dave, confirming much of the information that she was picking up from Dave clairvoyantly. Dave disclosed some of his paranormal experiences, which he believed to be due to his enigmatic dream character that resembled Sophia. He claimed to have seen and felt his bed pillow next to him indent by itself, as if an invisible entity was sleeping next to him. He also described the touch of this unseen presence. The touches were loving caresses that he believed to be from his mysterious dream character. Sophia secretly wondered if her fantasies of touching and kissing Dave could actually be physically sensed by Dave. She was certainly too embarrassed to tell Dave what she was really thinking about and how she would fondle him. Sophia confided to Dave that throughout that time period she heard ghostly breathing in her room at night. Again, this had never happened to Sophia before. On several occasions the breathing emanated from her left side while lying in bed. On another occasion the breathing was from another area of the bedroom. It happened in several locations, and Sophia knew it wasn't her own breathing, or George's, or anything coming from her child's room. On one occasion in particular, Sophia was out of town visiting relatives. That night, Sophia had a dream of lying next to Dave, as he cradled her in his muscular arms and delighted her with gentle touches and soft kisses. She felt his energy and believes she had a real encounter, even if it was an astral meeting or interdimensional connection. Upon awakening, the dream quickly faded as Sophia heard soft breathing next to her in bed, which also faded. The only communication that Sophia recalled was Dave telling her lovingly, "Yes, you will suffer. Yes, you will suffer." Several months into Sophia's love obsession she became emotionally distraught, exhausted, and physically ill, but she also went through a tremendous release of creative energy. In her greeting card business, which, as stated earlier, was a home-based business, she wrote beautiful poetry, prose and spiritually deep concepts, and she made great inroads with her publishers. But it was at a tremendous cost. After a month of persistent flu-like symptoms, somewhat like Epstein-Barr syndrome, which, by the way, is common for abductees, she grudgingly went to the doctor. While getting her blood drawn, she had a flashback. She believed this flashback to be an abduction memory in which her blood was drawn by a lab-coated person using a very modern blood drawing device. Sophia commented on this device during her encounter because it looked like a bluish-gray gun with a very short needle. It had a gentle vacuum action that drew blood quickly and painlessly through the skin, barely penetrating a vein or artery. Sophia recalled telling the lab-coated person, "Gee, that is neat, it doesn't even hurt." Disconcerted by the flashback, Sophia asked the real phlebotomist at her doctor's visit why they didn't use the nifty blood-drawing gun device that was painless. The phlebotomist looked at her oddly and replied that he didn't know of any device like that. Sophia was embarrassed, realizing that her flashback was a leak-through from an earlier abduction. The futuristic blood-drawing device continued to baffle Sophia. She even called the hospital laboratory and asked the personnel where they ordered the device, describing it perfectly, but to no avail. Such a device didn't exist, but the technician commented that it sure sounded like a novel way of extracting blood. After 6 months of the grueling, emotionally exhaustive love obsession with Dave, Sophia corresponded with a world-famous therapist. At the time, Sophia was skeptical of any love-bite theories, and she really wanted to believe that she and Dave were somehow divinely matched together. Sophia was determined to get to the bottom of her alien abduction memories, and understand why this love obsession was consuming her energy and health. The difficult aspect of the love obsession for Sophia was the realization of a love and passion so much more powerful than she had ever experienced with any man, including her husband. This created problems for Sophia's marriage, as she was no longer attracted to her husband, and could only think of Dave. Sophia sadly realized that for the first time in her life, she knew what true love and passion felt like. She described it as a profoundly deep, spiritual love and intense physical attraction unlike lustful sex, as she bluntly put it. The bond between her and Dave was the strongest she had ever felt with any man. She and Dave knew they could never express their love physically. This loss of realizing true love's embrace tore at Sophia's heart. It was the most despairing, incomprehensible grief that she had ever endured. It almost killed her. And the sad part of it was that she could only confide in her therapist, and not dare tell her husband. Besides, no one would believe her. Most people don't even believe in alien abductions, let alone some alien contrived drama like a love obsession. Everyone would laugh, she thought. And she was probably right. The only way she could cope with the great loss of love was to hope that someday she and Dave would be together. She also had a strong faith in God, which helped tremendously. The despair of lost love was a cruel blow to Sophia's sense of womanhood. It was as if Sophia gave up her very soul. Dave claimed to be happily married, but was he? Did he get everything he needed from his wife? Sophia knew he was probably bored with his marriage, and had trouble understanding Dave's double messages. His fascination for Sophia was never as strong as her love for him. He rarely, if ever, called her. But he was overjoyed to be thought of as a hero, an uplift to his masculine ego. Privately, Sophia rationalized Dave's inability to return her feelings of love. The harsh reality of unrequited love was beginning to leak through. She decided to make an appointment with a highly recommended abductions therapist. This bold decision would require her to travel to a large Midwestern city for several days, while she went through regressive hypnosis. A week before her scheduled visit, Sophia awoke to poltergeists in her home. Things moved in the room, the new house creaked as if it were an old Victorian. Immediately she fell asleep, as if drugged. Sophia then went directly into what she thought was dream. She recalled being taken to a large warehouse facility, like a military base. She was brought to a uniformed man sitting behind a desk who apparently was in charge of operations. He wore a tan, light brownish shirt and trousers. A tall reptilian guard stood to her left. She was interrogated with a barrage of questions. Sophia recalls being surprised at the nature of these questions. Why would a military man be so concerned about her private beliefs, especially about God? Sophia was not lucid, and flippantly told the officer that she was here doing the will of God and that was that. Angered by Sophia's forthright innocence, he quickly stood up from his chair and shouted, "Here, then have this. He handed Sophia a fingernail-sized section of blotter paper with the consistency of a damp towelette. This paper had a yellowish-brown dot in the center. He ordered her to eat it. Sophia obediently put the paper in her mouth, and started chewing. She told him, "I can't eat this." Sophia realized this paper couldn't be chewed and did not dissolve in her mouth. The military man became angrier and said, "Well, here. Have another one." Then Sophia took the other paper and put it in her mouth as instructed. Soon afterwards, Sophia recalled hearing voices or sensing telepathic messages not to see her therapist, and not to say anything about the love obsession and alien abductions. The voice said to Sophia, "Just go along with it. Everything will be fine." Another message also implied that if Sophia persisted in delving into this matter, her mother and sisters would be assassinated. Sophia added that this voice was hypnotic and designed to make her compliant with whatever plans were in the making for her and Dave. The next morning Sophia had a very sore throat and became ill with a bad cold. She was too ill to travel and had to cancel the trip to visit her therapist. She felt helpless and angry and feared that something bad would happen to her family. Sophia knew that something sinister was behind her abductions and this love obsession set up with Dave. Everything seemed to be such a mystery, one bizarre event after another. Sophia was determined to get to the bottom of it, even if she had to do it alone. In several telephone conversations Sophia and her therapist heard loud static noises, clicks and other electronic sounds when on the phone talking about her abductions. Similar telephone sounds were heard when Sophia mentioned the same topics with Dave. The sounds were most obvious and magnified in volume, especially when the topic of the love bite was discussed. The static grew so loud that they were forced to yell. This was no coincidence. Oddly enough, Dave seemed to be unmoved and glib to Sophia's findings and emotional pain. Dave thought it was something more extraordinary, having to do with his own importance. This was the first time Sophia learned Dave was a big egomaniac. It was all about him after all. She wondered how extensively he was being manipulated by the aliens, considering his reaction to the situation. This insight crushed her and she felt trapped and lonely. Dave was extremely self-centered and did not love her as she wished he would. Dave began acting indifferent and uncaring to Sophia and her experiences. When she called, he was always in a hurry and seemed to want to get rid of her. His words were incongruent with his behavior. He had become switched off to Sophia and instead only focused on himself. Something didn't seem right. Sophia really wanted to believe in Dave, but the veil was starting to lift, and the picture wasn't pretty. Sophia knew that her illusion of Dave was starting to crack, even though she hung on to any hope that she may be wrong. He was an extraordinary man, yet he had a dark, manipulative and self-absorbed side. It seemed to get worse with time. Oddly enough, Sophia still continued to call him, falling back into her obsession. It was like a love spell being recast upon her every time she heard his voice, and she continued to have romantic dreams of him. The mystery of the profundity of Sophia's love obsession gradually started revealing itself through a series of mystical experiences with a very powerful being, who was guiding Sophia through a series of self-revealing mystical experiences. Sophia was determined to confront the intelligence behind her obsession with Dave. She didn't trust this intelligence, or whatever it was hiding behind Dave's image. Sophia reasoned that it was probably some kind of deceitful alien or spirit trying to steal her love and emotional energy. She set her heart and soul at uncovering this mystery and the intelligence acting behind it. About a week after seeing Dave as an egocentric character, Sophia had another powerful dream. She described it as the Don Juan archetype. In Sophia's own words she said, "A tall cloaked being stood outside the back door of my home, lurking in the shadows, desperately trying to get my attention. Even at a distance I could feel his immense, magnetic presence beckoning me to draw closer to him. He had the most intense passion imaginable, and I had to fight in order not to be completely consumed by his powerful presence. For a brief moment I let down my guard and I felt his essence as being the strongest and yet most genuine and surrendering love. I was taken to know in no uncertain terms that I could not be an observer of his presence beyond this point, and if I got any closer to this magnificent being I would be magnetically swept up and consumed by this being. Sophia called her therapist to relate this powerful dream and the intelligence she called the Don Juan archetype. The counselor posed the question to Sophia, do you think perhaps that this being is behind your love obsession with Dave, acting behind his image? At that moment severe static cracked on the telephone, as if it were confirmation given by the being himself. It gave Sophia the chills. The spring months progressed into summer. Sophia remained depressed. She described this summer as the dark night of her soul. She remained skeptical of this being's benevolence. He seemed good and evil all at the same time. And Dave sure didn't seem to care. Neither did her husband. Emotionally exiled, Sophia felt like the eternal widow. The despairing, grief-stricken darkness in Sophia's soul forced her to pray harder than she ever had in her life. She wrote poetry like a trail of fairy dust off a magic wand. It poured out of her as if it came from someone else. The emotional desperation and grief of lost love hit its peak as Sophia cried out to God. She prostrated herself, going through torturous fits of crying. She begged the Father, "O Lord, please help me. Tell me how I should love him, Dave. The love and feelings I have for him are beyond my ability to cope. I know I shouldn't love him this way because I'm already married, and so is he. Please Lord, let me know your will on this matter. In Jesus Christ's name I ask you of these things." After years' worth of tears, Sophia collapsed asleep, exhausted. She woke up to the sound of an angelic, yet powerful voice answering her prayer. The voice she believed to be God himself. He responded to Sophia, "You are loving Dave as if you were molesting your own son. Love him as I do, as a son. And love me as your spouse." Sophia said the Father spoke other things, but she could not remember them all. The harder she struggled to rid herself of her erotic feelings for Dave, the deeper her grief set in. Sophia's hopes of having the love she so desperately wanted were nothing but illusions. Months passed. Eventually her grief cleared and a fresh approach entered her mind. If she could not be Dave's lover, perhaps she could play the role of the nurturing mother or Soror Mystica, his mystical sister, a confidant. Dave would now be her lunar mate, her Apollonian brother, like Romeo and Juliet, brother sun, sister moon. Well, Dave certainly acted like a child sometimes, but her son? And what did that make Sophia, a mother to Dave? A spouse of the Father? Sophia continued to pray to be released from her obsessive feelings for Dave, and they finally started to wane. But as the love for Dave ameliorated, she also began to realize that her relationship with George, her husband, was probably also an alien setup, possibly to have a child who, she feared, would later be abducted, as was she. The reality of the alien influence in her life was a thorn in her side. She still had to deal with the problem of the rifts and emotional isolation of her current marriage to George. Sophia had to pray against her natural inclinations to be able to even love George again as a husband. He had been unaware and unavailable during the most difficult period of her life, and she felt resentment and disrespect for him. Sophia pressed forward, insisting upon marital counseling with George. After all, Sophia contributed to the problems they shared and had systematically froze him out. On the other hand, George had issues of his own. He was completely unsupportive when having to face any discussion of alien abduction or marital issues, calling Sophia crazy every chance he got. This was obviously a reaction formation designed to avoid his own problems. Could this have been an alien manipulation? A disempowering, unfulfilled marriage? Sophia and George entered marital counseling only after Sophia insisted on a divorce. This brought the couple together and lessened the emotional isolation, but it was never the same. Sophia still believed that her true love was forever gone. Luckily, the obsession with Dave started to wane, as Sophia realized the love of the Father through a series of dreams and profound mystical experiences, which revealed themselves in a mysterious sequence of events. The father also emerged in other dreams in different forms, always in the triad of the Father-Son beloved. These visitations gave Sophia hope and strength, as well as a sense of the Father's goodwill for her. The duration of the love obsession for Dave took a little over 2 years, but now Sophia assures me that she won't let that happen again. She and her husband are closer, and she tells me she has a newfound sense of peace and release from her earlier troubles. She still has alien encounters now and then, but much less often. She admits that her husband is still not aware of the ramifications of what she went through concerning the abductions and remains in denial, but she has faith George will come around eventually. For now, she is content to have a stable marriage and family life. As far as love is concerned, Sophia had only this to say: even though my experiences have been painful, it was better to have loved and lost, than to never have loved at all. I marveled at her statement, and could only wonder what it must have been like for Sophia. Did she really lose out on love?